Homage to the Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all the lineage benevolent masters. Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all beings, please generate Supreme Bodhicitta before today's teaching. There's another piece of good news. It's about this book, Always Remembering. We've already finished publishing this book. When the time comes, every student in the Han region will get one. Maybe after a little while everyone can eventually have it. I think that actually a lot of people will be able to get it eventually. For our Larongga, in a couple of days, we can also distribute it to everyone. This book contains some of the previous teachings of the His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok that are preserved in this collection. Last year, during the 13th anniversary memorial ceremony for the His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok held here last year, I suppose, they made a Tibetan version. Later, I was supposed to go abroad last year, but I did not go as planned. Instead, I ended up traveling to another place. And during my time there, I took the opportunity to translate this book, putting considerable thought and effort into the process. If I had actually gone abroad, then this book simply wouldn't exist at all. It was precisely because I didn't go last time and I stayed here that I was able to get this book done and completed. So sometimes when obstacles are transformed into the path, it actually brings about something very good in another way. So here I feel that for His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, some are very special and excellent oral teachings we have received. I hope everyone won't see them as just ordinary words to be ignored. Because faith in the Guru, if it is a direct inner communication with the Guru at the deepest level at all, should not be regarded as ordinary language. If you treat it as ordinary language, you won't receive the blessings. So first, when we read the book, how we actually think about and really consider the book is very important. How you personally regard the author, in your view. If you approach it with a critical mind, or with a deliberate mindset or intention of betrayal, what is said inside will not be suitable for you. If you have respect and joy towards the author, or towards the book in this case, or if you feel that every sentence in it carries very profound and true meaning for all of us living today, then for you personally, actually, even though it may seem very, very ordinary, for someone who truly has faith in their heart, even a joke from him, even if it seems small or light-hearted for you, should have the effect of transforming your mind stream, shifting your perspective in a meaningful way. So I deliberately included a photo here at the top. This photograph was taken at a time before I became a monk, capturing a moment from my earlier life. It was the first photo of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok that I ever saw. When I becoming a monk at Khenpo Dabar's place, I think I've mentioned this before, right? When I had just put on the monk's robes, as soon as I entered, Khenpo Dabar was gently holding this photograph in his hand, looking at it quietly. It seemed that at that moment sunlight was also streaming in through the window. I myself felt very happy inside. I thought whether it was seeing the photo of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok or meeting His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok in person, to be able to meet His Holiness when I was just become a monk. At that time, back in the day, Khenpo Dabar was also very happy with the whole situation. So, in order to mark this connection, this photo was the earliest and most popular one in our Larongga that we had. When we first arrived there, it wasn't like now, with so many photos available. Each and every monastic's home had only this one single photo in their possession. At that time, this was the common practice throughout our Larongga. There weren't many other photos. Back then, there was a shop owner who sold photos. He still often walks around there nowadays. When he took the photo at that time, actually it seems it wasn't him who took it, but another photo, that it should have been taken before 1984, this particular photo as we know. This is a rather famous photo. So in the book Always Remembering itself, I used this photo for this book's cover. It's been a little more than 13 years since our teacher passed away. However, many of the important teachings and valuable lessons found here are truly unforgettable for all of us. Within this book there are, because our His Holiness lived to be 71 years old in his entire life, they divided it into 71 sections at that time. This year marks the 13th anniversary of the passing of the precious His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok from us all together. So in total there are 13 major chapters in total of this book. When they compiled it, They did so with a sense of symbolism. It also carries a commemorative significance. So at that time, during that period, I was extremely confident. I translated this book in one go very quickly indeed. After finishing the translation, I also hoped, this time we printed a relatively large number of copies. I also hope that each of you can truly receive the genuine blessings of the precious Guru. The language inside is very simple and plain. Basically, many people could probably say these words themselves, but some words of the Holy Ones have inner, secret, and outer layers, 3 profound meanings. This is something everyone should be aware of. So after you receive it in the next day or two, you should truly cherish and value and accept this book. If it's really difficult for some people overseas, there should still be some who are able to receive it, but I'm not sure if there will be an e-book version. If there is an e-book, then you should be able to get it as well. Okay? Let's first recite the transmission of the Lotus Sutra now. This is a balim number to batim tonga, Sora, Jondan dem tonga, Derosabam tonga, Jondan de Gipkatsara, Manji Gerbote, Tamjijan Zanwa Chimborte, Gundinane Jante, Tamjatana Sipchi, Tubadan Sixi, Tubate of Gungayon, Tanam Durdin de la Simki Batsam, Jis Yeran, Corajabon de Tam Chedner, Manji Gerbong, Lana may be on top. Zobushans of the long tondor, Manji Gerbote, La Division Shaba, Yonsum, Ning and Lendene, Chujinam Jan, the Yambatan, Tanatsu Jabat, Chituni, Simkiba, Zamgir, Jis Yeran, Rigium, Manji Gerbon, Lana may be on top. Chance of the long tondor, Manji Gerbo, Rigiu, Motel. She are truck to Yar Tonjot, name Garoshiba Yanor, Manji Gerbo, Rigiu, Motel, Sanjisha, truck to Yarton, Mambola, Molum Dabar, Dale, Manji Gerbo, Rigiu, Motel. Simson Lion, Nyonzi, Sheridan, Zion Lander, Meritiver, Rubra, Shao, Kantojinam, the Latana, Sujabi, Zion, Zamba, Locum. Stonam Yang, the Burjogam, Egam Jogam, Gini, and Jesus Temperature, the Juba, Stagam, Alawam, Dejan Soba, Jenda, Kiba, the Stumba, Jenda, Kiber Shebate, Zamba, Zambershetum, Ramjetum, Chobershetum, Alawam, the La Metodon, the Budon, Chana, Shibadan, Shimadan, Kudan, Zig, Kudan, Didan, Jamson, Dan, Livatan, Rumujala Soba. Chagam Sarvadan, Tarmojar, Shibin Chodo, Don Manji, Rigiumo, Kanala, Chichinamra. The Latana Jabachik Zamian, Zendam Gis Yeron, Manager Botella, Tamjing Lana Mepayon, the Birds of Shanship, the long ton of Manager Botella Tertavi. With me the Kanalagic, Kiba, with me Kanalagic, Chirket, the Mountain, Division Shabajan by Onto Burzuba Sanji, Sanjis, Jerva Simpson, De La Tava, Tagachi, Zerna, Manager Botet. Kebagam with me tail, Rigiu, Mote, Tambra Sharte, Congachuji Namjan, Le Tanatsi Jabachik Zamian, Zendam Tuberger, Nam Chujir Namjan the Lion, Ramorjeton, Rigium, Telala, Mountain, Attention Sabat, Jumba on top of Sanjin Jitendum, Jamala Tuji, the Journal Manager Rigium, Motela, Attention Sabat, Rigbur Sharte, Congachuji Namjan the Tanatsi Jabis, Chigzam Zona Yang, Hadam Jibin Jitengi, Dejan Sabatella Cortoja. Ganji Chuji Namjan the land had the Jean Chabagam, Chipper, Shebagam, Rather Tombagam, Igim Javagam, Gini, Jisaram, Shebagam, Lawam Tela, Metal, the Budan, Trawa, Shibadan, Chemadan, Kudan, Didan, Gamson, Dan, He, Vadan, Rumujadan, Jerde, Chagam, Sarjan Rapton, the Ba, Deda Karum, Shibartacher, more Manjiger, Rigium, Kanal, and I may buy out of the chance of the Yonso, Jubber Show, Teon Shabam, Tonga, Rubber Show, and Jitin La Panjan. Mulum di Wanga, Chuji Namdandala, Rabdo Tambishan, Lander, Mertie, Donici, Chumber and the Sheba, Sanji, Diachembor, Jabate, Chuji Namdan, the Shin, the Yandaba.
Tambam Changwa Nge Yongsim Ning and Lendene Zemjin Nam Yang Panjang Tsivi Don the Tiber River Shower, Manjigerbo de Jansoba Yongsim Ning and Lendene Kunguchi Namjan de Shamata Sante Cover, Semson Stigla and the Shamatan, Manjigerbo Rigu Motela Tejan Soba, Ye Ponya, Ponya River Shower, Rigu Motation Sobi Shower, Shibate, Tejan Soba, Nurbar River Shower, Manjigerbo Semson Down, Semdan, Dambadan, Dubisemda, Dambadan, Taxi Senda Dambakanle, Tejan Soba, Mumber. Marnimbar Mave, Kanjim Dordin, and Bichurma Tirtavi, Kimbagam Raptushua Tedala, de Demba Modimbi, Marnimbach, Chief Jabeti, Dubashan, the Mozaparte, Chief General Manager, Rikio Monti, Division Serbi, Manji, Division Serber, Yangi Gamber Rubrashate, Manager Bokongas and a Chuji Namjan, the Yikirim Gini, Alawam Siete, Chabala, Tobati, Division Serbam Chabala, Tobaran, the Kunga Kondra, the Doyon, Zemjinji, Tarmojadam, Kartojadam, Zambrajadam, Ramurjadam, Chubrajadam, Hadam, me method, Hadam, me method, Chamadam, Dupudam, Shibadam, Shimadam, Kudam, Adina Jamson, Hivadan, Rumu, Zavadam, Javadam, Kazedam, Donadam, Jumbadam, Chuk the Kirby, Hiramboji, Chuk, Churmavatela, Kurtasha, Churmavatela, Hiramboji, Pombo, Borosha, Tijina, Chuji, Namranda, Larsian Raptor, Tanayan, the Tube, Hodameba, Jangmepi, Simpson of Nirdolana, Payand of a chance of the Yonson, Jabber and Jerry Shiro, Tene, Jonathan Deji, the six of Japan, the Quapsar, do, Sondinian, and into the John Ranchon Yendo by Gonum Surndon, Zunshid Ba, Simpson Tate of Kurta Sha, Simpson Kenny, Gondote, Chestram near the top. Ba tenum dordin dozonte zambayan ta kurtorte semjin namla zeton do dordin dan soglo ba semjin namran doror shir jigtin gonji kewa yi semjin namla nyotse shir ganjigum dordin dan zan ba kewa Zombo tanes wombo tenan dragon so lana mepim dordin da shemiti la rapcha chang kanshir tena tehnawa Kia dena wona churmawa no ranjan tor maru meir pur tamchat tang lai me tok takim chod lai kujip kund kan chi din jigba dena yang chi din jigba dena yang nyandem don zamba chartar jarwan ranjon jena de la tok da tarjir njir langchim dor den darmawa Yete denam chobi shir zabja devjin ze dang shkumar ne dang nimar chugu jen gangnam dordin ndoshine yigirim janchang nyamba na mayir chapa ngeb dang te devjang shirbi shabshid gangjig ngayim danda ne chonir shijang nusim gi Kara Tsangwara Marnyam Zhao, Mati Digba Mangdam Per, Dordin Dana Raptum Bakanam, Dordin Zante La, Xiezang Marngam Mawati, Digba Shinda Te Mang Shat. Shangchu Sem de Yongzura Zhang, Kara Zobra Tarjara de Tsipchit Zama Chakchiki, Ma Kang Lanam, Ngumbro Tod, Agarti Ngalap Topa Na, Tele Sonam Che, Mang Nieta, Makang Te, Ngjopa, Tele Sonam Manda, Mer, Kara Jeva, Tondra Jada, Jadang Zidang Rodang, Lai Ragdang, Lai Larpuji, Stenzik Tetak Simcho Te, Kara Shiva, Jovjet, Sten La Tetram Choba, Ve, Lansing Dorte, Ndotuni, Ngomsar Chimbu, Tetop Yer, Manji Jerbu, Chodmu, Shushada, Choji, Konda Chebra Sha, Wo.
Next, we will teach the Lotus Sutra. Today, we begin the chapter on Dharma teachers. Actually, the meaning of the chapter on Dharma teachers refers to the merit of those who teach the Lotus Sutra, or recite the Lotus Sutra, or expound the Lotus Sutra, these practitioners. The chapter on Dharma teachers speaks of those who practice, recite, listen to, write out, and so forth, all those practitioners who form positive connections with the Lotus Sutra. The main teaching here is about those who have a connection with the Lotus Sutra. They are extremely powerful objects of veneration. If we make offerings to them, praise them, show them respect, and feel joy toward them, we will naturally accumulate great merit. If we slander or look down upon such teachers or reciters or treat them with contempt, the fault is extremely grave. In the past, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok taught, there were often many crows in our teaching hall. Previously, when some other Khenpos gave teachings, when listening to the recordings later, this is actually quite good. For example, I once listened to a teacher who has long since passed away. At that time, crows were constantly calling, and it felt as if one were right there at the scene. So sometimes the surrounding environment. Yesterday they asked, should we block up the window where the crows come in? I said, it's actually better not to block it. If we leave it open, they can come at night. Although they disturb us a bit sometimes, they go to sleep after a while. Before they sleep, they can listen to some music. They have much to say. In my courtyard there are many, probably several hundred little sparrows. Sometimes they're quite noisy. When I open the window, they chirp and chirp. Then I loudly tell them, don't shout. All the little birds become very quiet and stop, but in less than a few seconds they start up again. It seems little birds also have this tendency. If I shout, don't shout at them, they all become very quiet. Some children also don't listen. When you tell them not to talk, they stop for just a moment, then start talking again. As for the crows, they can also listen to teachings. There are also some, including those who come as tourists, apart from those present here, through computers. We are now using live streaming to share with everyone. Some of you who lack faith, if they listen to just a few sentences for now, that's fine, it's allowed. Some people may not necessarily have faith, but if they listen to one class is actually over 50 minutes. For worldly people, an hour passes very quickly. Yet this may plant an especially good seed in your alaya consciousness for many lifetimes to come. Therefore, we particularly allow this. What I want to share today is from the records of the Lotus compiled by the monk Zhengxiang long ago. There was a person who had great faith in the Lotus Sutra, but he was rather slow and not very good at reading. He just kept prostrating to the Lotus Sutra text. He did this continuously. At first it was like a charnel ground. He prostrated to the sutra in a cemetery. Later he moved to a cave, and perhaps because the cave was damp or for some reason his whole body became severely swollen, he began prostrating continuously. Later his body naturally recovered. After recovering, he once dreamed of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, who seemed to bless him and merge into his body. Afterward, all his physical ailments were eliminated, his mood improved, and most importantly, he completely understood the Lotus Sutra. What he couldn't do before, he now could do completely. There are also cases of people who, through the Lotus Sutra, for example, some who had a kind of mark on their necks or very large lumps, they vigorously recited the Lotus Sutra, and later the lumps naturally disappeared. There were also those with difficult diseases like leprosy, contagious diseases, very serious illnesses. By reciting the Lotus Sutra, they later recovered. There were mute people who couldn't speak at all. Through reciting and receiving the blessings of the Lotus Sutra, they also completely recovered. There were also those suffering from malaria. This was apparently quite serious. Nowadays, with some scientific advances, in recent years some Nobel Prize winners have been researching treatment methods. Previously it was very difficult to cure. Such people who contracted this disease also received the blessings of the Lotus Sutra and later completely recovered. So in our world there are many things that are hard to imagine. Those of us with wrong views simply don't believe in certain things. Through the blessings of Buddhist scriptures and one's own faith, along with the coming together of various conditions, these blessings are indeed very powerful and inconceivable. Sometimes it's necessary for us, when studying a sutra, to look through related materials. This is very important. In the past, for example, when studying Madhyamaka, gathering many materials related to Madhyamaka and looking at them all together was especially satisfying. It felt like the happiest thing in life. If I were to study the luminous essence materials related to the tantric teachings, looking at them all together was also very good. As for the Lotus Sutra, I haven't had time to look at many materials. Actually, the records of the Lotus is from the Tang dynasty. Later, during the Song and Qing dynasties, there were also compilations. Nowadays, many people are busy with worldly affairs, and as for practitioners, such accounts of reading or studying sutras with miraculous responses are relatively rare. Over nearly the past 100 years, many valuable Buddhist books and works have become increasingly scarce, as everyone should know. The relatively reliable materials we study now are all sutras and treatises from the ancients. So actually, many people's thoughts nowadays may have been drawn away by material things and external phenomena. In truth, external things are truly unreliable. It's best that many of us not spend most of our time on worldly matters, especially those with some attainments in Buddhism, whether Dharma teachers or lay practitioners should write something of value, especially while one's wisdom has not yet declined. Just like the ancients, if a person has one representative work in the world, whether for Buddhist research, at our institute, we specifically have arranged for mainly Dharma teachers to research Pure Land, Madhyamaka, and Vinaya. We have established many research rooms. There's also research on Buddhism and science. Especially now, most people believe in science. Actually, within science, there are many superstitious elements, yet people all think this should be the most reliable. This is how every era has its own history. Every era has its own story. In each era, people's values are different. Therefore, in our current era, the values seem to be primarily those of an era that believes in science. At this time, Buddhist teachings need not be forcibly reconciled with science. It's not necessary. Rather, if one understands Buddhist doctrine and many principles of modern science, they naturally coincide without prior arrangement. We don't need science to prove Buddhism is correct. Rather, certain profound truths of Buddhism can encompass discoveries made in science. Master Taishu also said in the past that as science becomes more and more advanced, Buddhist teachings become clearer and clearer. In fact, as science develops, especially as the science of mind develops further, perhaps Buddhist teachings will become even clearer. It's not that the profound meaning of science is to be researched by Buddhism. That would probably be, it's not because I'm a Buddhist that I stand on Buddhism's side to speak for Buddhism. It's not like that. We should discuss things as they are, speaking from a philosophical standpoint. When we examine things with very strong reasoning and rigorous logic, all should become clear. So before class, let me also share with you that when studying the Lotus Sutra, our attitude is very important. When you study, first, you should have a sense of how rare this is. Hearing the Dharma is not something that happens often in a person's life. Perhaps for some it's only a few months, or perhaps just one class. Perhaps it's 10 years or so, or perhaps only a few classes. So let each of us think carefully. The Dharma is hard to hear. Human life is hard to obtain. This principle is well worth deep contemplation. Next, we will teach the chapter on Dharma teachers. In this chapter, the main teaching concerns the merit of the Lotus Sutra. At this time, because of Medicine King Bodhisattva and 80,000 great beings, actually here it says the Buddha told Medicine King Bodhisattva and the 80,000 faithful followers. He taught them. It seems that in the translation it means Medicine King Bodhisattva and others. There were 80,000 faithful followers. The Buddha told them, Medicine King, you should see that among all these beings there are countless devas, nagas, yakshas, gandharvas, asuras, garudas, kinnaras, mahoragas, humans and non-humans, as well as bhikshus and bhikshunis, upasakas and upasikas, those seeking the path of voice-hearers, those seeking Pratyekabuddhas and arhats, and those seeking the Buddha path. All these types of beings, all of them have come before the Buddha to hear the Lotus Sutra. In the Tibetan text it says, Medicine King, have you seen so many? So many beings came before me to hear the Dharma. Then in the Tibetan it says, Medicine King Bodhisattva replied, World-honored one, Tathagata, I have seen so many. Then the Buddha immediately continued, saying that even one verse or one sentence of the Lotus Sutra, even if one rejoices for a single thought about it, I give them all the prophecy that they will attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. There was this intermediate dialogue, but actually the difference is not very great. Here, as we all know, when the Buddha taught the Lotus Sutra, there were indeed humans and non-humans. Humans were a large part. Here, the four groups of disciples, including this time, there are also the four groups of disciples and Dharma friends. Bhikshus, bhikshunis, upasakas and upasikas, or although we cannot see with our physical eyes asuras and kinara, there may be some asuras, what we call asuras. Some of you outside may not understand what asuras are. Asuras are also called non-gods. They're not devas, but pretend to be human. They love to fight and do bad things. These are called asuras. So many people came to listen. I myself also feel that the assembly listening to the Lotus Sutra this time should be considered quite large. Sometimes listeners who follow in sequence, whether in the Han region or Tibetan areas, for example, when a Dharma teacher teaches the Lotus Sutra, there may be hundreds or thousands. This should happen. But such a large assembly at one time, because now the internet is very convenient, science has many conveniences. For this reason we can probably be considered, I myself am thinking without exaggeration, if we look at history, during the Tang dynasty, including the Sui dynasty, as well as the Ming and Yuan dynasties, in the Han region, the Lotus Sutra was extremely popular. But when we look at some history, when some Dharma teachers taught, apart from a few hundred or a few thousand people, perhaps ours this time should be considered the largest. If everyone were in one place, one venue, the number might be quite large. Last year we held a Tara Dharma assembly in Hong Kong with about 10,000 people. At that time everyone felt it was a sea of people, but actually those listening to our classes now, not to mention asuras, humans and non-humans, mahoragas, we won't speak of these. They're definitely also listening in various ways, wearing various clothes. We won't speak of that. As for the true four groups of disciples, this time should be considered quite numerous. It's also historic, not an exaggeration to say. Perhaps you think this might be a bit exaggerated, but perhaps it's not exaggerated. If we speak of this, we should use responsible language. Perhaps since ancient times in the history of the Han and Tibetan regions, I don't know about India, but sometimes it seems the numbers in India were especially large, as taught in sutras. In this case, ours this time could be considered a rather grand teaching assembly. I also especially rejoice that from the beginning until now, basically most people take the Lotus Sutra very seriously. I am also very joyful because the merit of this sutra is so great. For each of us, obtaining a human life is extremely rare. Last year, near our Domang monastery, there were 2 lay practitioners' centers. Both centers have a Kenpo. One center has about 80-some people, another has over 200 people. I told both Kenpos, could you please give them a transmission reading of the Lotus Sutra, because many of them are local folks who may not understand the content the way we do. Probably 70 or 80% of people here should basically understand the literal meaning, but many elderly people there, basically most of them, 70 or 80%, cannot read. I said this merit is very great. You Khenpo should best give them a transmission reading. In this way, obtaining a human life in this lifetime will be very meaningful for them. In the past, I had seen the Lotus Sutra in Tibetan and later also saw it in Chinese. Then I myself felt that teaching this to everyone once in this lifetime would be the most meaningful thing to do. For me personally, there are some things one should do in life, but among them, I regard the Lotus Sutra as a very important matter. As for you listeners, of course, there are different attitudes. Some take it very seriously. Some may think, it's okay, I'll just listen a bit. That's fine too. Below, it teaches about the Lotus Sutra. Before the Buddha, it says, hearing one verse has 4 lines. One sentence, one verse has 4 sentences, or even rejoicing for a single thought. Even if someone hears the Lotus Sutra and you generate a mind of rejoicing toward them, or someone recites the Lotus Sutra, or someone copies it. For such such merit, the Buddha says, I will also gradually give them prophecies in the future. We greatly envy these arhats and bodhisattvas who receive prophecies from the Buddha, but actually, for us right now, this is how it should be when the Tathagata was in the world. Then it continues, saying the Buddha told Medicine King Bodhisattva, again, after the Tathagata's passing, if someone hears the Lotus Sutra, even one verse, one sentence, or even a single thought of rejoicing, then for such a person I also give the prophecy of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. This kind of prophecy. You see, this also gives us prophecies. Those of us who listen and recite this time, here it speaks of listening. As for listening, I also think that even one verse, originally when hearing teachings, it's best to listen to the entire Lotus Sutra from beginning to end. This is best, most ideal, but if one's various conditions. Even if today someone comes to the Institute as a tourist to look around, holding a long camera, also having no faith at all, wearing big black sunglasses bigger than one's own face, nowadays many young people feel that the bigger the black sunglasses, the better they look. If such people come here and hear even one verse, actually, truly, the Buddha blesses them and gives them prophecies. Even those who rejoice, some people may not have this opportunity themselves, but if they have a mind of rejoicing, then this merit is also inconceivable. Originally, we've taught this before. The merit of rejoicing is especially great. In the future, toward others, we should not have great jealousy. Sometimes when I look at the history of ancient times, including some movies and television, including among Buddhists, jealousy is especially strong with no mind of rejoicing. Verbally saying, rejoice in merit, but in the heart, the fire of hatred burns very fiercely. Therefore, if we truly generate a mind of rejoicing, the Samyuktagama says, always generating a mind of rejoicing, joy progressively increases. Through a joyful mind, one swiftly reaches the end of suffering. If we constantly generate a mind of rejoicing, we generate a mind of joy and happiness. If this joyful mind progresses, because of this joyful mind, your painful mind will naturally disappear in life. So why do we always have sad faces, feel uncomfortable, have bad moods? I'm in a bad mood, and what's the reason? Perhaps sometimes we haven't generated a mind of rejoicing, haven't generated a mind of joy. If we generate a mind of joy, we should all live very happily. Even if in your life you encounter great suffering and hardship, you will also have a way to deal with it. However, it seems that the other day, a professor from the University of California said that now, for Hollywood movies, when they require people to write scripts, it's best that happiness not exceed 5 minutes. Otherwise, life is not one of happiness, life is suffering. If it's especially painful, then this movie will be very splendid. If it's very happy, many people won't envy it. They'll think it's fake. So if it's like, oh, how miserable, how pitiful. His life is truly, when you see some of this, this is the approach of suffering is life. I increasingly feel that this principle has meaning. Therefore, if we have more rejoicing, whether as Dharma teachers or in studying the Lotus Sutra, it's all very good with boundless merit. The meaning is that even hearing one sentence or one verse or even rejoicing, the Buddha has already given prophecies. This is after the Buddha's passing taught to people like us. So if we hear one sentence or one verse, I've heard that many people after listening to the Lotus Sutra this time gradually develop faith in the Buddha. Gradually they write it out and recite it. I also hope that each of you will make aspirations well. See if you can read it at least once in your lifetime. We are now looking at the Lotus Sutra once. After we finish teaching it all, you can read it through from beginning to end. This project is not large, it should be doable. Make aspirations in your heart as well. This way it will have great meaning for your life after life. Also, can some of you copy it out once? If you cannot copy it by hand, you can type it out on a computer. If even this doesn't work, request a copy of the Lotus Sutra. This also has very great merit. So in the future, whether reciting or writing the Lotus Sutra, of course, as for rejoicing, oh, others are listening to class, I rejoice. You go study, I rejoice in the merit. I'll still go drink, I'll go smoke, I'll go somewhere else. Some people often do this. So among us Buddhists as well, some study rather haphazardly, but it's also okay. If someone upholds, recites, explains, explains or writes the Lotus Sutra, they themselves recite and uphold it, always carrying this text or explaining it to others or writing it out by hand, even one verse, and also regarding the Lotus Sutra as truly like the Buddha, making various offerings. For example, flowers, incense, necklaces, powdered incense, burning incense, also anointing incense, silk canopies, banners and flags, clothing, musical instruments, and so forth, even joining palms in respect toward this text. The meaning is that in the future we should place the Lotus Sutra text in our shrine rooms. This time when we study, we can only do this, but in the future everyone should. I see that nowadays in the Han region, some fortunate people have rather nice, quite exquisite shrine rooms. Buddha statues are from Nepal or Chengdu. Nowadays at Wuhu Temple, the best business is Buddha statues. Many people request Buddha statues. Requesting Buddha statues still has great merit than making wonderful offerings before the Buddha statues. In 1993, when I went to Taiwan and America, at that time, basically in mainland lay practitioners' homes, Buddha statues were almost never seen. When I visited those places, wow, they had wonderful shrine rooms at home. Some wealthy business people made an entire large room into a shrine room with many Nepalese tankas inside. At that time, in my heart, I thought, if only in the future in the mainland there could be such large shrine rooms, Buddhist centers. At that time they had some small Buddhist centers. When we went to Hong Kong and Taiwan, there were some about 3 bedrooms and 1 living room. Such a small house, but this was still a rather famous Buddhist center. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok stayed at a Paleo-lineage Buddhist center, Penor Rinpoche's. At that time I thought in my heart, if only in the Han region there could be 1 or 2. In one city, if there could be such a Buddhist center, how wonderful. I kept making aspirations in my heart. Now indeed we have many family-style Buddhist centers. Some provide houses, some in this regard including electricity fees. In some aspects it's also very good if we all help each other a bit. Otherwise the pressure may be a bit great for some. After all, many of us rely on our own meager, diligent efforts to make a living. For each person to be alive here without starving to death, this truly is quite remarkable. In this era, competition is so strong and food and clothing are not easy to find. So in such an era on this matter, we need to provide many Dharma friends with practice places, providing them with food and some learning. Each of us should have a sense of how rare this is. I don't know where I was just speaking, but my point is that as for Buddha statues in your shrine rooms in the future, also place the Lotus Sutra text in your shrine rooms. Originally, our Buddhist books, we place them in relatively higher places. Everyone sometimes offers lamps, incense, and water. If you don't have time for this regularly, nowadays we have wonderful offerings, the 7 precious things, the 8 auspicious symbols to make offerings with. Of course, some rather lazy Buddhists never wipe off the dust above. Looking at it, this shrine room is quite pitiful. It seems after many years. All the offerings are completely covered in dust. There are also such shrine rooms. These are shrine rooms amidst dust. Actually, it should be very dignified. Patrul Rinpoche teaches in the preliminary practices that when we make offerings, if they look especially pleasing, comfortable, and dignified, then this merit is also especially great. So we use various offerings to make offerings, also joining palms, showing respect, including here, excellent clothing. Here, offering excellent clothing to the Lotus Sutra probably refers to this. Generally, in Tibetan Buddhism, we often have something rather nice. The other day, I calculated. Originally, they arranged this kind for me. I said, the quality of this cloth is not very good. I specifically selected one. The Lotus Sutra should wear the best clothing. This should be the best clothing, offering excellent clothing, right? Also musical instruments and so forth. Nowadays, as for musical instruments, if you have some robots sing songs, they also start singing some songs, but sometimes they can't respond. They're quite slow, those robots. You probably don't know. AI robots, if you have them sing the Buddhist song, Missing the Guru, it takes them a long time to respond. Then slowly, it will still sing. Nowadays, many AI robots can sing Missing the Guru and many other Buddhist songs as well. Put them in the shrine room and have them sing every day. Below it says, just now it taught that Medicine King Bodhisattva, you should know these people. Actually, in this very life, if we make offerings to those who uphold the Lotus Sutra, this is not easy for them. They also once made offerings to 10 trillion Buddhas and made great vows before them. For the sake of benefiting beings, out of compassion for beings, they have come to this human world. They are truly great bodhisattvas. Our old Dharma teachers often say, this is not easy. So they are truly great bodhisattvas who have come to this human world. Because many of us have faith in the Lotus Sutra, make offerings, and uphold it, actually they are reborn ones who should have many aspirations to come to the human world. This is taught in the Lotus Sutra. It seems that many of us should all receive prophecies. Sometimes it seems there is hope. The Buddha told Medicine King Bodhisattva, if someone asks, what kind of beings will be able to become Buddhas in the future? If asked this way, you should be able to say, such people. What does such people refer to? It means those taught above who make offerings to the Lotus Sutra, who uphold it, recite it, listen to it, and write it out. Such people will definitely become Buddhas in the future. What kind of people will be able to become Buddhas in the future? Such people can become Buddhas. Why? If good sons or good daughters, not to mention the entire Lotus Sutra, even if they can recite one sentence, uphold it, explain it, and write it out, and make various offerings to the sutra scrolls, also with flowers, incense, necklaces, powdered incense, anointing incense, burning incense, silk canopies, banners and flags, clothing, musical instruments, performances, joining palms in respect, and so forth. All people in the world can make offerings to such people. They should make offerings just as they would to the Tathagata. What kind of people can become Buddhas? Those who respect, make offerings to, and recite the Lotus Sutra, make offerings to such people just as to the Tathagata. We should know that such people are great bodhisattvas who have accomplished Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. These people, we can say, have compassion for beings, and with this great aspiration have come to this human world. In this case, moreover, just now it spoke of one verse. If one can recite it, such people can also receive prophecies. Then how much more so for those who extensively teach and explain the Lotus Sutra, even more so, not to mention those who uphold it and make various offerings. That is to say, those who merely recite one sentence or one verse of this. In our world it is said they are great bodhisattvas, truly remarkable. We can say they are bodhisattvas, reborn ones. Such great merit, if someone truly recites the entire Lotus Sutra, all of it, explains all of it, studies and hears all of it, such people, even more so, need not be mentioned. They are truly great bodhisattvas, people with the hope of becoming Buddhas in the future. The Buddha again told Medicine King Bodhisattva, you should know that these people have actually abandoned pure karmic rewards. After the Buddha's passing, out of compassion for beings, they are born in this world of the 5 turbidities, where they extensively teach the wonderful Dharma of the Lotus Sutra. If good sons or good daughters after my passing, not openly but secretly teach the Lotus Sutra to even one person, even privately to an individual person, when we give guidance, some instructors have only one student. If one teaches the Lotus Sutra to just 1 or 2 people, even one sentence from it, then such a person can be said to be sent by the Tathagata, an envoy of the Tathagata, dispatched by the Tathagata. They are carrying out the Tathagata's activity. How much more so for those who teach the Lotus Sutra before great assemblies? Such people are truly remarkable. So we should also understand that teachers of the Lotus Sutra, those who give guidance to others, who teach others, this merit is extremely great. Therefore, I hope many of our Dharma teachers in the days to come should also make aspirations. On one hand, study and recite it well yourselves. On the other hand, when conditions are right, you should, even if just to 1 or 2 people, you see, even privately to 1 or 2 people, if you teach them, this merit is inconceivable. This is one who spreads the Tathagata's activity, a true practitioner of benefiting beings through the Dharma. Originally, there are many more scriptural quotations and stories, but today I may have spoken too much at the beginning, so I'll just briefly go through the literal meaning. I see today's content is not too much, and the literal meaning is also relatively simple. Then the Buddha again told Medicine King Bodhisattva, if there is an evil person with an unwholesome mind who, for an entire kalpa, constantly slanders and curses the Buddha, finding all kinds of faults with him, will this wrongdoing be light? Absolutely not. This wrongdoing is extremely serious. Think about it. An evil person toward Shakyamuni Buddha or toward Medicine Buddha or toward Kashyapa Buddha, not to say for 100 years or 1,000 years, but for an entire kalpa, constantly slandering the Buddha over the long term. This person is too terrible. This wrongdoing is especially terrible, but if another person uses evil speech to slander, slander means to vilify and defame monastics or lay people who recite the Lotus Sutra. This wrongdoing is even more serious. So sometimes, whether those who teach the Lotus Sutra or those who read it, those who uphold the Lotus Sutra, it's best not to slander them. I'm not talking about myself. You too, whether reading or hearing it, Waifin, we often speak of the 10 Dharma practices. As for the 10 Dharma practices, the Madhyanta Vibhaga also teaches that those who practice the 10 Dharma practices obtain boundless merit. Those who practice the 10 Dharma practices, the merit they obtain is inconceivable, boundless. Whether we recite or write out, what is the reason? Because it is supreme and inexhaustible, and through embracing others it does not cease. It far surpasses any other merit, incomparable. Also, its merit is endless, inexhaustible. Also, it can completely embrace many beings, and so on. Much is taught. It should be in the Madhyanta Vibhaga. Anyway, much is taught about the merit of the 10 Dharma practices. So everyone in your remaining years should also think about this. What I just meant to say is that if some people slander those who recite the Lotus Sutra or those who write out the Lotus Sutra, one must be especially careful. Otherwise, these are extremely powerful objects of veneration. Slandering the Buddha, this originally has extremely great fault. But conversely speaking, in a very short time, so last year when many people began, there were all kinds of people. When I taught the Lotus Sutra, later I thought, these people have created too great a wrongdoing. However, some people have themselves taught the Lotus Sutra before and say such things, then not knowing they keep saying this. In the Tibetan it says that whether true or false, whatever language is used, slandering is not acceptable. This is not in the Chinese version. For example, if you want to slander someone, whether it's true or false, whenever you slander them, whether slandering with reason or without reason, no matter what, toward teachers of the Lotus Sutra, listeners or upholders, you absolutely must not slander such people. You see here, lay people, monastics, reciters, those who recite and teach, such people must not be slandered. So among us Dharma friends as well, it's best not to slander each other. Otherwise, everyone is now reciting, so everyone else is a rather powerful bodhisattva. Whether true or false, it's best that whether lay people or monastics, we try not to slander them. Master Yingwang also taught in the past that if we respect the scriptures, then recite them, respect them, and rejoice in them, this merit is inconceivable. If we use evil speech to slander, this fault is also especially terrible. Master Yingwang taught much about respecting scriptures and the faults of disrespecting scriptures. Then the Buddha told Medicine King Bodhisattva that those who recite the Lotus Sutra should know that this is being adorned by the Buddha's adornment. Actually, all the Buddha's merit already adorn such a person. So we can say if someone holds the Lotus Sutra in especially high regard, they can carry it on their shoulders. In this way, this merit is extremely great. They are actually carrying the Tathagata on their shoulders. If we often read the Lotus Sutra or carry a copy of the Lotus Sutra in our bag, this means the Tathagata is already contained in your bag. The Tathagata is always inside. We can say this. We shoulder the Tathagata's family business. On our shoulders we can carry the true body of the Tathagata. Wherever such a person goes, all humans and non-humans should pay respects, join palms, show respect, make offerings, honor and praise them. also with flowers, incense, necklaces, powdered incense, anointing incense, burning incense, silk canopies, banners and flags, clothing, fine delicacies and performances, the finest offerings among humans to make offerings to them. The treasures of the devas can also be scattered upon such a person. The treasure heaps of the devas can also be offered to them, as for humans and devas. So if we don't take this seriously in the future, of course we may. Whenever I teach a sutra, I have you bring the text. When teaching the Medicine Buddha Sutra, I also had you bring it, so some people don't bring any, while some people with faith, every time they go out, they bring many texts. I myself also have a tendency to like the new and discard the old. In the past, for example, when teaching the verse summary of Prajnaparamita, for 2 or 3 years I always carried this. Of course, I always carried the liberation by wearing, and then when teaching the Lama Yangtik, for a while I carried that. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok often carried the Lama Yangtik. He always carried it. Just now, a Tibetan scholar came and said, "Give me a transmission of the Guru's heart drop," holding a copy. I said, "This empowerment nowadays, many are not that simple. We'll talk about it later." He has already practiced the preliminary practices, so it's still possible. Many of our scholars nowadays, such people, it's not only that their theory is acceptable, they must also be very good in actual practice. Otherwise, if they haven't actually practiced, just being able to speak verbally is truly useless. You see here, if one carries this text, then all people should be able to show respect, prostrate to you, make offerings, and rejoice. All this is possible. Why is this so? Because if such a person delights in teaching the Dharma, delights in teaching the Lotus Sutra, then in a very short time one can hear the Lotus Sutra, because they carry the Lotus Sutra. If they also like to transmit it to others, then in a very short time you can hear the Lotus Sutra, even one verse, one passage. In this way, one attains Sambodhi for this reason. That is to say, why are people so good to such a person? Why are they so? What's the reason? Because such a person likes to teach others. If they teach, then in a very short time, even one verse, one sentence, one section of content from it, actually relying on this condition, conditions are inconceivable. In the future, you will attain Buddhahood. Even if you don't attain Buddhahood in your life and practice, you obtain great benefit and transformation. So we should integrate practice with life, not separate practice from life. Some of us Buddhists, it seems when they practice, they cannot live, and when they live, they cannot practice. At all times and places, we can integrate practice into life. In this way, we normally have time for practice. Otherwise, if you abandon life and then practice, except for a very few people, it's possible, but for most people, this truly doesn't work. We cannot leave life. We practice within life. This is a very important method of practice. Below, what does it teach? We use the verse format. Let me briefly explain. The world-honored one restated this meaning in verse form. If one wishes to attain the Buddha's path and accomplish natural wisdom, one should diligently make offerings to those who uphold the lotus. If you wish to attain natural primordial wisdom and accomplish the Buddha Dharma, you should make offerings well. Make offerings to what? To those who uphold the Lotus Sutra. If you wish to quickly obtain all the Buddha's wisdom, you should uphold the Lotus Sutra yourself, recite the Lotus Sutra, and respect the Lotus Sutra, reading, writing, reciting, hearing, and so forth. These are all within upholding. The scope of upholding is quite broad. Also make offerings to those who uphold the Lotus Sutra. Even if they are not noble ones, you can still do so. The Abhidharmakosha says, though not noble ones, yet toward parents, the sick, Dharma teachers, and Bodhisattvas in their final existence, the merit of making offerings is boundless. Though they are not noble ones, toward parents, Dharma teachers, and the chronically ill, as well as those in their final existence, making offerings to them yields boundless merit. Originally, to Dharma teachers, making offerings to them yields boundless merit. To parents, making offerings to them also yields boundless merit. Some parents often say, "You should make offerings to me. Making offerings to parents has great merit." Some parents often use this scriptural citation to ask their children to make offerings. The Khenpo said the Abhidharmakosha says that making offerings to parents not only has no fault, but great merit. To complete your accumulations of merit and wisdom, you should make more offerings to me. This is also acceptable. Parents are a very important object of veneration. This is also acceptable. But for those who uphold the Lotus Sutra, making offerings to them is very meaningful. If someone can uphold the Lotus Sutra, one should know such a person is an envoy sent by the Buddha. Out of compassion for beings, they have come to this world. If someone upholds the Lotus Sutra, then actually such a person has abandoned pure Buddha lands, specifically coming here. They are reborn ones. They are true bodhisattvas. From Sukhavatju, from Abhirati, all the enjoyments originally in pure lands. It seems we are all like this. Looking at it today, because earlier it was also taught that we all came here. Originally we thought we were all a group with heavy karma, but looking at it now, we've abandoned all the enjoyments and privileges of pure lands. We've completely renounced them all. Out of compassion for beings, we all came to this human world. Because everyone is studying and upholding it. One should know that such people, regarding rebirth in samsara, have complete freedom, completely free. Moreover, in the world of the five turbidities, they come to this world to extensively teach and recite the Lotus Sutra. If with the flowers and incense of the devas, the jewels and garments of the devas, the various treasures of the devas, one makes offerings to Dharma teachers, this merit is also extremely inconceivable. The Buddha said, "After my passing in the age of the five turbidities, if someone can uphold the Lotus Sutra, one should join palms respectfully toward them and also respect and make offerings to them as to the Buddha." The world-honored one is no longer present. When the Tathagata was in the world, the Buddha was the teacher. When the Tathagata is not present, we take the precepts as our teacher. Similarly, when the Tathagata is not present, we regard the Lotus Sutra as the Tathagata and make offerings. When making offerings, we can offer them the finest delicious foods, sweet drinks, and various types of clothing. Making offerings to such children of the Buddha, actually they hope that in a short time they can hear the Dharma. After hearing the Dharma, in just a brief moment, they obtain true benefit. If some people uphold the Lotus Sutra for the sake of future lives, then the Buddha says, "I have sent such people to the human world specifically to carry out the Tathagata's activity." This merit is extremely great because they are people who practice for the sake of future lives. If throughout one kalpa someone constantly harbors malicious thoughts and with an unwholesome countenance, with an unwholesome attitude, curses the Buddha, this wrongdoing is boundless. But conversely, if some people recite the Lotus Sutra, uphold the Lotus Sutra, then in just a brief moment, if someone slanders the Lotus Sutra with evil speech, their wrongdoing far exceeds the previous fault of slandering the Buddha. So in the future, we really should be especially careful not to slander the Lotus Sutra or those people associated with the Lotus Sutra. As for practitioners, we should not participate in this. I've also said before that in our degenerate age, there are few who spread and practice the Buddha Dharma. There's no need to slander the Dharma. No matter which school or tradition, none of us have spread our own tradition very successfully. So everyone should have pure perception. If someone seeks the Buddha path and throughout one kalpa joins their palms before the Buddha, praising the Buddha with countless verses of praise, this merit is boundless. But praising the merit of the Lotus Sutra completely surpasses the merit of praising the Buddha mentioned earlier. You see throughout millions of kalpas using all kinds, just like in the past, Ashvagosa Bodhisattva used all kinds of beautiful language. And also the praise surpassing the gods, and in the Chinese lands there are also some songs praising the Buddha using these. Actually, some of you have quite good writing skills. Write more songs praising the Buddha. If you post them online, many people will share them too. This is very good. Every day writing some meaningless thing, this is delicious, that is delicious, or occasionally writing such things is also okay. But nowadays, some of us, it's not like before. Now many people, in the past, when you wrote a book, only people around you saw it. Now online, how many people there are. You see how many good articles and good poems there are. So sometimes, for the sake of praising one's own merit, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also said before, when you're teaching poetics, to complete your accumulations, you should praise the Guru and praise the Buddha. Then many people wrote praises of the Guru and his body, speech and mind. We originally went to Guru's sacred mountain. Every day we wrote verses of praise for the Guru and Manjushra Bodhisattva. There was one person's praise. His writing skill wasn't very good, and at the time there were some jokes. Originally, Khenpo Gado wrote poetry, but he wasn't very good at it. He could only teach some bodhicitta. At that time, His Holiness required them to write homework assignments. We know that in Tibetan poetics there are many rhetorical devices, some hyperbole, all kinds of exaggerations and words of praise. Khenpo Gado had one line at that time that was quite famous. Later, when it's convenient, I'll translate it for everyone. What does it say below? Throughout 80 billion kalpas, with the most wonderful sounds, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, make offerings to those who uphold the Lotus Sutra. If one makes offerings in this way, even for the briefest moment, also praising, for example, if we make offerings for a very long time, this merit is extremely great. But if for just the briefest moment one hears verses of the Buddha's Lotus Sutra or part of its contents, one should greatly rejoice. Why? Because in this very life one obtains extremely great benefit. That is to say, we praise through various means, praising such a person. Why? Because upholders are actually the source of all happiness. For example, if someone can teach the Lotus Sutra through the inconceivable blessings of the Lotus Sutra, they enable many people to obtain true benefit. If someone recites it through the blessing power of their recitation, in the briefest moment, in just a short time, they enable many people to obtain true happiness. So the Buddha told Medicine King Bodhisattva, "Today I tell you that among all the sutras I have taught, this sutra, the lotus, should be considered the foremost. Generally, other sutras teach that the Prajna Paramita is first, the Lotus Sutra is first, the Avatamsaka is first. But here it says it is the most foremost. All of these, the other day, some lay practitioners also spoke to the gurus saying most. What most? Small, big. So this Lotus Sutra is the most. The meaning is that it is the very best. Among all these Mahayana sutras, the Buddha told Medicine King Bodhisattva, among these sutras I have taught, originally each sutra is especially sublime for different beings. But this one truly among all sutras is the best, most wonderful, most profound, most vast, most meaningful, most blessed, most powerful. So each and every one of us has encountered the very best, the most excellent, the most profound, the most blessed, the most wonderful, the most such a sutra. Our conditions should be the most sublime, right? So I think that regarding this Lotus Sutra, everyone should, in your everyday life, regard it as a very important sutra in your lives. We may not lack books. Nowadays in a bookstore there are so many books, but a book like the Lotus Sutra is truly very rare indeed. At the same time, as I also just mentioned, the book Always Remembering has many causes and conditions and inconceivable blessings. I won't speak of this here. I hope everyone accepts these principles. Behind the principles there is also something called blessings. Behind blessings there is also something called resonance. Behind resonance there is also something called, realization. So, in our secret mantra, this kind of realization in Dzogchen, realizing through the view, this is realizing through study and contemplation. There is also a kind called realizing through practice, one's own meditation realizing in this way. There's also a kind of realization called realizing through blessings. Although one hasn't really listened much or practiced much, the blessings of the lineage gurus and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. When they directly enter the deepest place of your heart, it seems that unknowingly many treasures are opened and much wisdom naturally flows forth. So in our Dzogchen, including the enlightenment methods of Jigme Lingpa and Longchenpa, there are 3 methods of enlightenment. Therefore, when we study the sutras, we should also acknowledge. Recently, I've been translating Kandrakarti's clear words, but I haven't received the transmission for this before, so there are many places I don't understand. Then yesterday I told a Khenpo, perhaps it's because I haven't received the transmission. I don't understand this, I don't understand that. It seems that if one has a transmission naturally, when looking with one's own wisdom, some places truly aren't understood. But if there is a transmission, when the blessings merge into one's mind, then the content of this sutra or any treatise we study, after having received the transmission, others may not necessarily accept this. What transmission? The sound just passes by your ear once. What's the point of that? Some materialists may not necessarily accept it, but if they don't accept it, there's no way around it. There are many things we don't accept either. So sometimes perhaps it can only be this way. Our Lotus Sutra is not very difficult to understand textually, but I myself believe it has a kind of blessing power. Behind the blessing power, it has an inconceivable power of merit. This merit, we ordinary people now cannot see it with our physical eyes, and with our conceptual thinking, we may not understand it very completely. But perhaps when your thinking reaches a certain point, you will then realize that this Lotus Sutra actually has such what other sutras cannot express. You should also remember this sentence. Among these sutras I have taught, this sutra, the Lotus, should be considered the foremost. That's all for today's teaching.
Sonam dei tanche rupanya tonani de dhamma pasi kirgana jirano chupai chupun sonen droa droa sho
bandharangara badna sadarda bandharangara badna sadarda bandharangara badna sadarda